Welcome back to Conversations That Matter. I'm Ron Gray, and I am joined again by my friend Jessica Bollinger, a licensed clinical social worker, and we are into the conversation about building better relationships. Jessie has practiced Imago Therapy for the past 20 years and has incorporated it into her personal life, into her business life. So she's here today to talk about that with us. And we are now at a point where we're talking about integrating those principles into community relationships. And specifically the conversations that we've had in our Conversations That Matter community discussions, because we've talked a lot about the differences or the separation that's caused by political ideology, if you will, in our community and really across the country. And I think we're seeing that heavily right now. Depending on what issue you support or don't support, what politician you support, don't support, etc. So how can we, and I know it starts with individuals, how can we incorporate those practices in the Imago Therapy theory into our conversations with folks really around the political arena, because it's a hotbed now and it's causing us to be so divided.
Right. Let me back up just a second for a few minutes.
Okay.
I was a board member on the international Imago International Relationship Board, and we are in like 34 or maybe 40 countries now. Wow. And there's a lot of therapists now. There's a lot of people being trained now as practitioners, facilitators that are in the business community, in the business world. So that's a cool thing.
Yeah. How
this is going out there like that. So I'm at this one board meeting about 6 years ago at Harville's Ranch down in New Mexico, and El Sueño, I think it was called. He's in tears, and he's like, something that makes me sad, because I think he had just turned 80 then. Something that makes me really sad is knowing that so many people don't go into a therapist's office. So many couples don't go to a therapist's office, and how this messaging could get out there to more people, because it is so useful and can plug right in to having difficult conversations with on all levels, on all fields. And he and his wife were from Dallas, Texas, Helen LaKelly Hunt. And they started there, and they started something that's called Safe Conversations. And with doing Safe Conversations, and they were promoted by the mayor, they had, I think, a whole huge convention center where they talked about the principle of being able to have real true listening, do the mirroring, and really get what the other person is saying, to be able to validate somebody else's view, somebody else's viewpoint, and to empathize with that. Teaching this to 10,000 people at a time. Yeah. It was amazing, and they had babysitting provided
relative to their business relationships, right?
Well, in couples and people from all over Dallas, all over the community, and it was a nominal fee.
That's
because they just want to get this out there, and because it's so productive to be able to, that we're all an individual, and we have to optimize our individuality so we can make the biggest contribution we can.
Right.
Because, like you talked in the previous segment about being in an arena, that when we're in that arena, we have to be ourselves, and we have to be that vulnerable person in that arena, and doing or saying or investigating or finding out more about whatever we want to learn more.
Yeah.
And that by us being able to grow that individuality, that we can add even more. We can add even more to that world if, like in your intro to this part, is we end up all, we can end up all thinking alike in, okay, we got to choose sides, and then we have to go along with this side. Okay, if I'm Republican, I go along this way. If I'm Democrat, I go along this way, and that ends up just kind of like congealing us into one certain mold, but we can't.
Yeah.
You can't. So they started this Safe Conversations, and the Safe Conversations has been taken into communities. It's been taken into police forces and so forth to help. Ron, at one of our conferences years ago in Toronto, I witnessed a Palestinian in dialogue with an Israeli.
Wow.
And you know what they both wanted? What it boiled down to was their kids to be safe.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It almost every issue boils down to a commonality, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And that's the principle behind Conversations That Matter, is that we have more in common than we have different. And if we could just keep our eye on that principle and find ways to have effective dialogue like you're incorporating through your therapy, then we could heal as a nation.
Right.
And we could come to terms on major policy legislative issues and find some commonality there that really leads us to that end result of keeping our kids safe. Really, that's it, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So it starts with us. It starts with us acknowledging what you're feeling. It starts with us telling you that we get what you're saying. We get what you're feeling. And really caring about how you feel about that issue, right?
Yeah. And
whether we agree or not.
you don't have to agree or disagree.
It's almost
I've
irrelevant,
got you.
right?
I've got you.
Yeah.
And then with this sender receiver, and then the next person's turn that was just receiving. They say, well, what comes up for me now is, and by listening to another person and to their world, it changes us. It changes who we are.
Yeah. And you look at it and you think, oh my gosh, this is revolutionary, but it's quite simple, isn't it?
Very simple.
If you just do the hard work to acknowledge the other person in a way and not put yourself first every time, not put yourself between you and the other person about how zealous you are to be heard yourself,
right?
Or to be acknowledged yourself.
Let me give you an example that can boil it down. Where one of our Imago people, Haiti, was watching some movies with her little grandson in bed, and he looks over at her and he says, "Bubba, I love you," and she goes, "I love you too, Jacob. I love you too," and he goes, "No." He says, "No, I love you." And she says, "Yeah, that's right. You love me and I love you." He goes, "No, no." And then it clicked and she got it. And she said, "Jacob, you love me." And he said, "Yeah."
Yeah.
Okay? So it's just being able that I got you.
You know, this gives me hope. It gives me, that's it. It just gives me hope. It gives me hope.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah.
And that's it.
But we got to be brave.
Yeah, we got to be brave. We got to be vulnerable.
We can make up all kinds of things in our head.
Yeah.
You're not going to like me. I don't really know all I know about this.
Yeah.
I'm starting this group, and will anybody show up?
Yeah.
If I start Conversations That Matter, will anybody show up? And I gotta just go back to that Ron, you started. There was after the Parkland shooting. It's like, oh my gosh, here it is again. And everybody's in their own house. They're in their own heads thinking about, oh my gosh, and they have their own thoughts. And then somebody put it out there, hey, there's a group that's going to get together so we can have a discussion. And that's how it started, late February, where we just all these different people showed up, so we didn't have to hold it inside.
Yeah.
And you started it off with the right spot, that it's not going to be you versus me or this issue versus that issue. It's all of us showing up with what's in our minds and our hearts, that we all can be
And on
present.
some level, we were practicing these principles, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely, that there's not going to be crosstalk.
Yeah.
There's not going to be, I'm not going to interrupt you while you're talking. And yeah.
And it's been, not to speak for a lot of other people, but what I am hearing people say, it's almost like therapy for them. And clearly it has been for me too, just to understand and know there are other people that have the same fears and concerns over a lot of issues. And we'll just keep it kind of broad. And this dialogue and these conversations really help us. It's almost validating to each other that, you're not the only one that has these fears. You're not the only one that has these concerns. And even though we all may not agree on every issue when it comes to public policy issues, it is validating, and there's a lot of empathy shown, even though sometimes we disagree.
Right.
It's powerful.
We have a witness.
Yeah.
We're witnessing each other.
Yeah.
And there's billions of people in the world, and we need to be witnessed.
Yeah.
We need somebody to witness.
So I want to ask you a couple questions.
Yes.
I heard someone say one time, we're not meant to be perfect. And I think a lot of times folks get caught up in the perfect image, society's expectations of what we're supposed to be in relationships, especially. I heard them say, we're not meant to be perfect, we're meant to be whole. What does being whole mean to you?
Yeah. So, we come into the world with joyful aliveness. It's our natural state. And we express ourselves through the way that we sense, feel, act, sensing, feeling, acting, being, okay? That we express our energy that way. So our wholeness is just our full alive energy. That's being whole. Then some things might happen, through society or inadvertent caregiver messages like you think too much, or boys don't cry, or why can't you just act, or so on like that. And that can kind of shrink up that joyful aliveness and do those adaptations. So it's what can make us a whole is being able to be vulnerable, being able to take risks, being able to experience a lot, but we don't have to be great at it. I might want to go surfing. I don't want to hit a 20-foot wave in Hawaii, but I might want to stand on the board, and I want to try that experience. And that gives me a taste of something different. And I'm not gonna ever be competitive, or I don't want to be, but just to be able to try something new, and that we can make a mistake, and that mistake is how we learn something.
And to me, being whole doesn't mean that we don't experience sadness or grief. It's not always happiness and joy. It's not always riding the 20-foot wave.
Right.
But sometimes you're going to crash and burn.
Right.
But it's how you get up.
Right.
And how you build back is how I define wholeness in a way.
Right. And it's that depth of feeling, and feeling all feelings, that emotions,
All of it.
Emotions are the language of our body.
Yeah.
And we got to listen to it. It's our body languaging stuff to us.
People are afraid to feel the grief. They're afraid to feel the pain. They don't want to feel the pain. Well, of course, we don't want to feel the pain. I think the only way to get through the pain is to feel it, right? And that part of being whole.
Yeah, so people numb themselves, and there's all different forms of numbing ourselves, with TV or with internet or computers or with drugs and alcohol. There's all kinds of ways that we numb ourselves, but then we don't really live.
Yeah.
I know you're a dog lover. Well, unfortunately, dogs live 12 to 14, 16 years maybe. So we give all our love, we get attached to this little animal, and boom, something happens to them, we lose them, and they think, that's so painful. That's so painful. How could I ever get another dog? I'll never get another dog. I can't get another dog. Well, we had the opposite with them too. We had all of this fun, daily, great experience. So it's the iceberg goes underneath the water too, right? And to the top, that we have to experience it all.
It does. Yeah. Well, we only have a couple of minutes.
Yeah.
And I have a 3-question challenge for you.
Yeah. Hit it.
What is one of the biggest lessons you learned this past year?
Biggest lesson, don't need to hold myself back.
Yeah?
Yeah.
In keeping with our New Year, Better You theme, and you helping us live our best lives. what are you most looking forward to leaving behind in 2018?
For last year, what I'm looking forward to leaving behind.
What are you leaving behind, not carrying into the new year?
The part that, well, I'm looking forward to leaving behind the part that nipped myself from talking.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
used to blame it on somebody else, but I nipped myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you're really good at it. Just as a reminder,
Thanks.
you're really good at it.
Okay. Okay.
You're kind of like my sister. You don't say a whole lot, but when you say it, it has meaning and has meat. So we need it.
Okay.
Feed us.
Third question.
Third question. What are you most looking forward to in the new year?
Life. And being vulnerable. Let's be vulnerable, Ron.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Well, I will if you will.
Okay. I got your back.
Awesome.
High five.
Good deal. Well, thank you for joining us.
Yeah.
And I'm excited to share this on our podcast. And we also play this on Lexington Community Radio. So for you guys out there, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. You can capture all of our platforms at conversationsthatmatter.co. You can follow us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, and subscribe to our YouTube channel and iTunes. If you're ever interested in exploring more about Imago Therapy and you want to sit down and talk with Jessie, I'm sure we can get you connected with her. So thanks again. Learn more about us at conversationsthatmatter.co. And until next time, Happy New Year.